Hey guys, this is Drooby-Doo of GNA Reviews, and today's video is brought to you by Lootcakes. Now I already done told y'all about Lootcakes, but if you didn't hear me the first time, Lootcakes allows gamers to share their purchasing data from free-to-play games in exchange for digital gift cards. All you have to do is sign up, link your email, and that's it! Add the games you play, and start earning Lootcakes right away. Remember, when you earn enough Lootcakes, you can redeem them for any gift card you want. Oh my god, why are y'all so nosy? Once again, Lootcakes is having a giveaway for people who sign up. Just click the link in the description below, and if you sign up by September 15th, you'll be eligible to win a $50 gift card. And if you want a chance to win even more stuff, Lootcakes, they got you. You can earn tickets to a weekly raffle and win up to $100. That's enough cords for Oni to waste on MP3 Castoria. I told y'all last year, and I'm gonna say it again, I love using Lootcakes. I might be having great luck with FGO pulls for now, but that won't last. And when I have to buy those big boy packs, at least I'll get some form of compensation for my suffering. To join now, you can click the link in the description below, sign up, and start earning with Lootcakes. Now back to the video.
It just wouldn't be Gouda Gouda without a badass katana-swinging samurai, would it? Hello everyone, Soberoni of GNA Reviews here, with a spotlight for the Gouda servant who flash-stepped his way right out of Devil May Cry, Saito Hajime. We'll be examining his stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize him effectively, and an overall grade comparing him to how he stacks up to the other 4-star servants. So if you're skilled enough to reach maximum style points, then make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell, so you can catch all of these spotlight videos as they go up, and you can help out the channel. And now, on to Saito's stats. Saito has a max HP of 11,873 and a max attack of 9,425. Both his HP and attack stats are just mediocre compared to the rest of the SR Saber lineup, and they remain mediocre to slightly above average for a 4-star servant overall. When it comes to his command cards, Saito has 4 hits on his quick card, 2 hits on his arts, 2 hits on his buster, and 4 hits on his extra card. He has an NP gain rate of 0.76% and a star rate of 10%. Despite his high NP gain rate, Saito's NP gain is still below average, at least on his face cards, due to his low hit counts, while his star generating is just about average. Overall, Saito has very balanced and average stats across the board, which would be more fitting for an all-rounder or an off-support rather than an offensive servant. Taking a look at his skills, Saito's first skill is Freely Drawn Sword, rank B. This skill increases his arts and buster card effectiveness for 3 turns, between 10 and 20%, and it also generates between 10 and 20 crit stars, all depending on level. His second skill is Eye of the Mind True, rank B, which grants him 1 turn of evasion and increases his defense for 3 turns, between 9 and 18%, depending on level. And finally, his last skill is Invincible Sword, rank A. This skill increases his own attack for 3 attacks or 3 turns, between 20 and 30%, and it increases his own crit damage for 3 attacks or 3 turns, between 50 and 100%, both depending on level. For passives, Saito has Magic Resistance, rank D, which increases his debuff resist by 12.5%, and Independent Action, rank C, which increases his crit damage by 6%. Moving on to his deck and Noble Phantasm, Saito has an Arts Buster deck with Quick Arts Arts Buster Buster and an Arts Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm is Mugyo. It's a single target arts attack that deals damage to one enemy with between a 900 and 1500% damage modifier depending on level. It also reduces the enemy's critical attack by 20% for 3 turns, and it reduces their arts card resistance for 3 turns between 20 and 40% depending on overcharge. I regret to inform you that when it comes to Ascension mats, Saito is a definite contender for worst servant to level in the game. For level Ascension, he needs 18 Heroes Proof, 24 Bones, 36 Spinal Fluids, and 4 Divine Wines per skill. Heroes Proof can be farmed at the Pirate Ship in Okeanos with a 64% drop rate. Bones have a 70% drop rate at the coordinate XG in Fuyuki. Spinal Fluids drop at Shinjuku Station with a 73% drop rate, and Divine Wine has a 14% drop rate at the Palace of the Dragon King in Agartha. For skill Ascension, Saito is going to need an additional 36 Bones, 36 Heroes Proof, 60 Stakes, and 20 Tranquil Bells per skill. Stakes have a 76% drop rate at the Gallows Hill in Salem, while Tranquil Bells drop at the Bomb and Cave in Lost Belt 3 with a 45% drop rate. You know, it's characters like Saito that really make me wish that FGO had a 2D fighting game spin-off. Just imagine the moveset. Come on, Arc System Works. Nevertheless, FGO not being a fighting game sure doesn't seem to prevent Saito from slapping enemies around. While his stats may seem overwhelmingly mediocre with relatively unimpressive attack and HP, make no mistake, Saito is 100% offensive. His first skill, Freely Drawn Sword, provides him with a 20% buff to both his arts and buster cards, as well as a small star bomb. Unfortunately, Saito doesn't have a star absorb skill, and as a saber, his star weight is only average, so he can't always make use of the stars that he generates. Still though, 20 stars is a very good amount, and the short cooldown of the skill is exploitable. The arts and buster buffs also have good synergy with his deck, the arts buff especially, since while small, it does help a ton with his NP gain. But Saito also has a secondary buff on his third skill, Invincible Sword. This skill grants him a 30% attack buff for his next 3 hits, and a massive 100% crit damage buff for his next 3 crits. Now on the downside, a 30% attack buff for just 3 attacks is very low, since you'll usually only get 1 to 2 turns of use out of it, but on the bright side, that's often more than enough. Combined with his arts buff, these 2 skills effectively provide him with a mana burst for his NP, which is single target, so that's a huge buff. Additionally, the 100% crit damage buff for 3 attacks is much better than 100% crit damage for 1 turn, since it means that you can stretch the damage out and have a much better chance of getting the full effect of the buff without wasting it. After all, it's much easier to land 3 crits over the course of 3 turns than it is to land 3 crits in 1 turn. Between Freely Drawn Sword and Invincible Sword, Saito has all the buffs that he needs to be a fearsome DPS. But what about defense? Well, that's where his second skill, Eye of the Mind, comes in. It's a standard 1-turn evasion along with a minor defense buff for 3 turns. Now as far as defensive buffs go, this one isn't exactly extraordinary, but it's still good. Hard defensive skills are rare on pure DPS servants, and this gives Saito just enough survivability to handle most bosses and challenging content. For skills, level Freely Drawn Sword first, even if it's the weaker of his 2 steroids, because that arts buff is crucial for looping, followed by Invincible Sword next, and then Evasion last. Mana loading and extra attack up are also worth picking up for Saito's append skill. Saito's Noble Phantasm is a single target arts attack that lowers an enemy's arts resist before damage, and also lowers their crit rate. The crit down can be useful in some cases since it lowers the crit chance by a decent amount, and you can easily loop Saito's NP to stack it. But obviously the most important effect of this Noble Phantasm, outside of the damage, is the 20 to 40% arts down. That is huge. Not only does it apply a debuff that other attackers can take advantage of, but it also combos well with Saito's arts buff to give him essentially a 40% bonus arts damage modifier, as well as NP gain on his Noble Phantasm. With all of his buffs active, Saito is capable of hitting way above his weight class with his Noble Phantasm, and he can almost put out damage on par with the SR Sabers. Saito also has the advantage of having 7 hits on his NP, which is a lot. So while the NP gain on his face cards may not be all that much, the amount of NP gauge that he gets refunded when he Noble Phantasms makes him easily capable of looping even against single enemies. So he's a pro at cutting through multiple enemy break bars, as long as he's provided with the proper support. Outside of his Noble Phantasm, Saito can also be a particularly effective crit DPS for arts teams, due to his powerful 100% crit buff and star generating ability. Just keep in mind that his lack of a star absorb can make his critting a little inconsistent compared to other pure crit servants. Speaking of which, there is no shortage of arts crit servants, especially among sabers, and this is kinda where Saito runs into an issue. Unfortunately for him, the saber class is full of even more powerful and far easier to obtain single target arts servants. Saber Hokusai, Saber Lancelot, and Yagyu, just to count the SR Sabers alone. And Saito doesn't really do anything to separate himself from this batch of servants to make him a viable alternative. Saberlot is much more consistent as a crit saber, Hokusai has better single target damage, and Yagyu is much better in challenge quests due to his utility. That makes Saito the odd man out, and being a limited servant with extremely hard to level skills doesn't really do him any favors. It's a heavy investment for not much reward. Still though, based on his own merits, Saito is a force to be reckoned with on the proper team. You'll primarily want to pair Saito with supports who can either buff up his arts cards and provide an NP battery, or with supports who can can bolster his crit damage and consistency. For an NP focus, servants like Tamamo, Paracelsus, and Mosh will work very well. Tamamo and Paracelsus are both excellent NP batteries that can also bolster Saito's arts damage, while Mosh gives him a little less damage and NP charge in exchange for better survivability in boss fights. For a more crit-oriented approach, try out servants like Lan Ling, Mozart, and Caster Gill. All three of them are capable of increasing the start generating of the team greatly, and they can also buff Saito's arts damage too. Saito's Bond CE is Memoir. It increases the party's arts and buster card effectiveness by 10%, and it's not really worth using since he isn't a support. Instead, go with CEs that buff his arts card effectiveness like Sign of a Smiling Face and Royal Icing, or CEs that buff crit damage like Another Ending and Gem Magecraft. In the future, Ocean Flyer is a very good CE for Saito, as it not only provides starting NP charge and arts buffing, but pure attack stats as well. As for command codes, any code that buffs Star Absorb is excellent, like Majin-san, and I would highly suggest attaching it to an arts card so you can maximize his NP gain. Overall, Saito is an excellent single target arts DPS, capable of putting out heavy amounts of damage for his rarity. His Noble Phantasm is very powerful and can even be looped, which helps him with cleaving through enemy break bars. He can double as a crit DPS due to his stronger than average crit buffs, and he even has more survivability than the average DPS, if only due to his evasion. However, he's a limited servant that's hard to obtain and hard to level, and he's in a highly competitive field. Many alternatives will do his job better for less investment. And as a crit DPS, he still lacks in consistency due to his lack of Star Absorb. With all of that said, Saito gets an A- from me. Saito is kind of hard for me to grade because in a vacuum, he is a crazy powerful SR Saber that hits way above his weight class. He just has the unfortunate position of occupying a space with more OP sabers while also being harder to obtain and invest in. But if you like him and you do happen to roll him, he can easily be the main focus of any arts team that you can build, and he can carry you through the majority of content. And those are my thoughts on Saito. Again, an excellent servant, but just hard to recommend given that there are a few better alternatives that exist out there, one of whom is a free servant. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over on our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter, and I'll see you all in the next servant spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.